The Second World War produced many tales of heroic soldiers, sailors, pilots, and their victories. The tank aces of the war are a bit lesser known, but no less interesting in my opinion. The most remarkable of these tank aces was the German tank commander, Michael Wittmann. During his short-lived career as tank commander, he destroyed around 138 enemy tanks, 152 artillery pieces, and over 200 small army vehicles. The life of Michael Wittmann ended the way he lived, during an intense tank battle in Normandy in 1944, right after D-Day. This is the life of one of history's greatest tank aces. Michael Wittmann was born in the year the First World War broke out, 1914. When he turned 20, Hitler had been in power for a year and was about to cement his position by purging hostile elements within Germany. Michael joined the German army as private, and 3 years later he joined the SS Leibstandarte, the Praetorian Guard as Hitler described it. Initially, the division served as Hitler's personal bodyguards, and as the Second World War broke out and it rapidly became apparent Germany required more soldiers to fight on Germany's frontiers, the division was transformed into an armored division. Michael now traveled all over Europe. He served in Poland and France as an armored car commander, and in the Balkans, where he won the Iron Cross second class. It wasn't until the Russian campaign that Michael shot to fame within the German Reich, however. As Operation Barbarossa was launched in June 1941, Michael, close by with his unit in the Balkans, was sent to the Russian battlefield. Initially he manned an assault gun, but when, during the Battle of Rostov, he destroyed 6 Red Army tanks in one single engagement, he was transferred again. He was deemed a natural talent by his superiors and was allowed to retrain as tank commander, promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and was assigned a Tiger main battle tank in the SS Panzer Regiment 1. Documents reveal that Michael turned out to embody the ideal qualities of a tank commander. Now, before we get to his command style, it is important to note that German tanks consisted of a tank crew of multiple men. Michael's tank crew contained the gunner Balthasar Wohl, one of Germany's best tank gunners, who was awarded the Ritterkreuz for his actions. Balthasar had just turned 21, and Michael was not even 30 yet, when the Eastern Front, both of them, made a name for themselves. One of Michael's greatest shows of his ability as a tank commander was on the day of the Kursk offensive, as it was launched on July 5, 1943. The offensive was an attempt by Hitler and the German High Command to compensate for the loss at Stalingrad and push back the advancing Soviets. It was to become the biggest tank battle ever in history, and certainly a decisive battle for the war. Now, on the southern front, as the offensive commenced, the Leibstandarte's Panzers led the German front. At the tip of the formation were the Tiger tanks of the Heavy Panzer Company, one of which Michael commanded. It didn't take long for Wohl to target and destroy the first Red Army anti-tank gun. With incredible speed, the company advanced, facing multiple Red T-34s, a Soviet medium tank. Destroying several of them, the Germans managed to rout the others. It was then Michael received information by radio that the platoon north of them, under the command of the 24-year-old Helmut Wendorf, was in trouble. He ordered the Tigers to move north, but due to their rapid advancement, they emerged behind another Red Army anti-tank strongpoint. Nearby, Wendorf's tanks were surrounded by the T-34s, and one of his Tigers was destroyed. Turning to aid Wendorf, Michael's Tiger destroyed 3 T-34s within minutes, while the other Tigers took on the anti-tank stronghold. His tank suffered serious damage, and he put his life on the line several times that day. But by the end of the day, they could resume their advance, claiming 8 Red Army tanks and 7 anti-tank guns destroyed. It didn't matter though. By August, the battle was over, and the Germans, vastly outnumbered by the Soviet forces, were forced to retreat. They suffered an incredible amount of casualties, over 150,000, with thousands of tanks and hundreds of aircrafts destroyed. But it was nothing compared to the Soviet losses, which lost at least triple, if not fourfold, that amount. There are many stories about Michael's tank battalion on the Eastern Front. Within 6 months, by the 7th of January, he had destroyed 56 tanks, and in the next 3 weeks, he upped his tally to 100 1917. He was a force to be reckoned with, recognized both by the Soviets and the Germans alike, and on the 14th of January he was awarded the Ritterkreuz, and 2 weeks later he was awarded the Oak Leaves. The German propaganda machine lifted Michael to hero status. Ironically, he was a reserved man that didn't like to talk about his victories. Nevertheless, books, postcards, and even films were created, romanticizing his endeavors. The German command decided to move his company to the west. The Battle of Kursk had been lost, and desperate attempts and offensives were still launched in the east, but to no avail. Michael, he was now placed in command of the 2nd Company in the newly formed Schwere SS Panzerabteilung. This heavy panzer unit under Michael's command would give the Allies more than a hard time within a half a year, as D-Day was launched, and the Allies would fight bravely and defiantly to secure the Normandy beachhead. On the 6th of June 1944, the Allied powers launched their D-Day offensive, the largest amphibious invasion in history. It marked the starting point of Western Europe's liberation. 6 days after the initial invasion, the Allies were fighting in Normandy, attempting to secure the beach. Supported by tank divisions, it was the British 7th Armoured Division that moved to the southwest of Caen in an attempt to breach through the German line. They were veterans from the tank battles in the Western Desert, but the current terrain they tried to move through wasn't anything like that. This landscape, known as the Bocage, was a maze of fields, orchards, and small muddy provincial roads. In other words, it was far from the ideal battleground for tank divisions. Nevertheless, the 7th Armoured Division kept advancing. Early morning the next day, they were joined by 4 Cromwell tanks and an infantry battalion. They occupied the village of Villers-Bocage, a small village but strategically important. The Germans knew this as well and were preparing their counteroffensive. Now, the British camp aimed for a gap in the German lines that appeared on the 12th. By the time they had reached it, it was filled by 3 companies of the Abteilung, heavily battered due to the constant Allied air attacks. Now, what the British didn't know was that in the woods northeast of Villers-Bocage, Michael and his company of Tiger tanks were hidden, ready to strike at the right time. As the British were rolling up towards the little village, they stopped on the road leading to the village to fuel up their tanks. Michael saw this as his chance and ordered his Tiger tank to roll towards the village. Completely on his own, he entered the village from the woods. 4 yeomanry Cromwells were parked on the main street. Without hesitation, Michael ordered his Tiger to fire at the tanks. 3 were instantly destroyed. The 4th managed to reverse himself behind a building into a garden, escaping Michael's attention. It was the beginning of Michael's most impressive feat. The Tiger tank now rapidly moved towards the western edge of the village. A British squadron was parked there. 4 Sherman Fireflies equipped with 17-pounder guns. The British were waiting for the orders to enter the village. Once they spotted a Tiger tank, they launched their attack. The Tiger was hit, and Michael quickly ordered his tank to retreat. Reversing back into the village, Michael came face to face with a 4th Cromwell that had escaped his attention. It was under the command of Captain Pat Diaz, who now sought to take revenge for the other Cromwells. He ordered and scored 2 direct hits on the Tiger. Unfortunately for him, the frontal armor of the Tiger resisted both direct hits and return fire. The 88mm gun struck the Cromwell, rendering it inoperable. Its crew climbed out and scattered, though they were no match for the German machine gun fire and were quickly mowed down. Pat Diaz was wounded but managed to escape the barrage of fire, contacted his superiors and told them about what was going down in the village. The Allies quickly needed backup. Michael Wittmann had, within 15 minutes, destroyed 13 tanks, 2 anti-tank guns, and between 13 and 15 transport vehicles. It was his biggest victory, and once news got out, it launched his persona to a legendary proportion within Germany. As Commander Diaz was reporting to his superiors, Michael quickly drove his tank back into the woods on the outskirts of the village. His unit of Tigers was still concealed between the trees, but now were ordered to turn their attention to the column of British tanks stationed in front of the village, refueling. The Tigers took their positions, their aim, and fired. Within 10 minutes it was over. The British Armoured Division was no more than a heap of burning shrapnel and skeletons of once mighty tanks. 3 Cromwells and a Firefly that had entered the village upon realizing a firefight was happening turned up on the roundabout in the center of the village. The 4 tanks took cover behind houses and hoped they would be able to ambush the Tiger tanks. These Tigers now rolled onto the main road of the village they had refueled and restocked. They were ready for battle. By now the village was already reduced to rubble and the burning houses and buildings. 2 Tigers and an Mk4 Panzer rolled up on the main street, past the roundabout, and immediately were ambushed by the 4 tanks waiting for them. Michael's Tiger sustained a direct hit on the left side from an anti-tank gun. His tracks flew off, and the mighty Tiger crashed into a building. The other Tiger fired at the house where the anti-tank gun was hidden. None of its gunners would survive the explosion. Now the Cromwells turned into action, however, and the second Tiger was instantly hit and disabled. The engine compartment of the Mk4 Panzer was hit by a shell, and that tank too became inoperable. The crew of all tanks jumped out and fled as fast as they could, leaving their burning tanks behind. A firefight followed for the next couple of minutes with direct hits scored on both sides, and once the dust settled, Michael's company had inflicted over 100 casualties and destroyed 20 Cromwells, 4 Fireflies, 3 light tanks, 3 scout cars, and a half-track. In the evening, the British pulled back. The German reinforcements from multiple Panzer divisions now arrived. The support wouldn't be able to do much though, as during the night time, the Allies leveled the village with bomber planes. German propaganda at the home front made it out to be that Michael had destroyed over 30 tanks on his own. About the actual numbers there is still much discussion, and the exact details will probably remain a mystery forever. Michael Wittmann was awarded the swords on top of his Ritterkreuz and oak leaves he already possessed. He would not enjoy his legendary triumph for long though. On August 9, a tank battle near Caen led to his Tiger tank being ambushed by a Firefly. One direct hit blew his tank apart, and the British found his charred, leftover remains. It was purely due to his medals that they realized they had killed a high-ranking officer. His body was buried in an anonymous grave and wasn't reinterred in a German cemetery until 1983. His final victory tally stood at around 138 tanks and 132 anti-tank guns, all achieved within 3 years. And that is the story of one of, if not the greatest tank ace of the Second World War. Thank you for watching this video. I would also like to thank all my patrons for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and want to support my work, consider checking me out on Patreon. For just $1 a month, you will gain access to the exclusive Patreon series. If there is a person or event from the Second World War you would like to know more about and perhaps see a video of, let me know your thoughts in a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.